Hi everyone, this is Mrs. Hamilton in my art room, and we are going to be doing a sweet art activity today. And that is, we are going to make donuts, or a donut collagraph. And for those of you who might not know what a collagraph is, it is a printmaking technique. And printmaking is where you ink and you can make multiple copies of your art, okay? And it's kind of like creating a type of stamp. So what we're going to be doing for the collagraph is we're going to be using thin cardboard and stacking them so that they raise up off the surface, and when we put some ink on them using aluminum foil, and we can take wet paper, place it on top, and when we pull it, it will make an image or an imprint of that art piece. So that is a printmaking style called a collagraph. It is very easy and cheap to create, and so that's why we're doing it today. So we're going to be doing a donut design with the collagraph, and if you don't have all the materials, which I'll explain what materials you'll need when we flip the camera and start the lesson, if you don't have all the materials, then you can just design with crayons or colored pencils or markers or whatever you choose. So I'm going to be doing both examples, both the collagraph as well as the colored design or the crayon design, and you can choose which one you want to follow along. You can pause the video or skip to the section that you want to follow. It is your choice. We're going to have a lot of fun creating art today, and I'm excited to see what you guys come up with. All right, guys, have fun, and I'll see you in a moment. I'm going to flip the camera. All right, we are going to get started. First thing I want to go over is the different materials you're going to need for both designs, because we're going to be doing two different examples of the donut design. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is what you're going to need for the collagraph. The collagraph is is the type of print design we're going to create. The first thing you're going to need is you're going to need some thin cardboard. An old cereal box works really great for that. Okay. You're going to need some paper for drawing and for the printing. You're going to need a pencil or Sharpie for drawing. You're going to need some glue to glue down some of the pieces for the collagraph. You're going to need a piece of foil to wrap the cardboard with. You're also going to need a moist sponge to also create the print. And then some kind of circle template, could be an old CD or a round bowl or something like that, okay? That is going to be, actually we're going to be using this for our drawing as well. For our design, for just our design version, you can use create the cardboard. If you do have a little bit of cardboard, you can use the cardboard to create a tracer, or you can use stiff paper. So I'm going to put that off to the side for a moment. So you could do that, or you can just use your paper and markers and crayons. Also for the collagraph, you're going to need some water-soluble markers or regular markers, okay? Or for just the coloring and design, you can use the markers. All right, so the first thing we're going to do, I am going to start by doing the collagraph, and then I'm going to do the basic design of our just a basic coloring drawing design for our donut. All right, so first thing I'm going to do is I actually took one of these pieces of paper and folded it in half and cut it so that it is not quite as big. This is not copy paper. This is a thicker paper, or like a construction paper. When you go to do any of the printing later on, you're going to want nice thick paper for that, but I'll talk about that. If you're just doing the drawing and the design, you just have regular paper. You can keep it whole, or you can cut it in half, your choice. All right, so I cut mine in half for the collagraph, and then what I did is I took my my cereal box and I traced this paper and cut it out so it'd be just the right size. So this is what I'm going to build my donut collagraph on. All right, then I'm going to take another piece of cardboard, whatever, or reuse what you have, and fold it in half. Now this is already pre-folded, which is pretty nice. Okay, and I'm going to take this. So I'm going to put this is going to be the bottom of the collagraph. This is where we're going to put the donut on top. I'll put that to the side for a minute. So I'm going to take this other piece so I can make the donut shape, and I can either grab the CD or a bowl. It's completely up to you how you want to do this, and you want to put it about halfway. I'm going to turn this vertical. Halfway, you want to put the bowl so that it overlaps the folds. So this is my fold right here. You see how it opens? This is the fold of the cardboard. And I'm going to take this and kind of try and place it about halfway where the bowl overlaps my cardboard halfway. Okay, then take a Sharpie or pencil, either one works, and hold down my bowl and trace. And I'm going to turn this again, and right in the middle I'm going to do another half circle right here so that I have a donut hole, or the inside of the donut hole. Okay, so I'm going to do that, and it's okay if it's not quite perfect as long as it's close, just like that. And after I'm done, I'm going to take my scissors. You will need some scissors just for this part for cutting out, and I'm going to cut out the donut. So remember, I'm cutting on the fold, and what this should do is when I'm done cutting it, it's going to start by making a circle, see, for the outside shape of our donut, and then I'm going to cut the inside shape, half a semicircle. And remember, when you're cutting, you want to keep your scissors straight, and you want to move the cardboard with the other hand, with your hand with no scissors. So I'm actually keeping my scissors very straight and using this hand to move. It really helps. You might want, if you're cutting the cardboard and not paper, you might want to go ahead and get someone to help you if it's a little too thick to cut. Get your parent to maybe help you with this part. Or you could just use the paper and just do the basic drawing and not the Collagraph. But this is for the Collagraph. So we need this thick cardboard because we want it to pop off the surface. That's really important to get that, to do our Collagraph printing. All right, so after you do that, you're gonna take the smaller piece of cardboard that you cut out, that is the shape of the size of our paper. You're gonna place that here. And we're gonna glue our donut shape right in the middle. Now, if there's anything wrong with the cut, you can always close it back up and cut a little more. I feel like I need to cut a little tiny more of my donut hole. Just like that. There we go. There we go. You can see it's part of a peanut butter. And we're going to glue it down right in the middle. Take off this little piece here. I'm going to take some glue. Remember, dot, dot, not a whole lot. You want to go around the edge, or you can use a line to go around the edge, and maybe a little bit on the inside edge. But we don't need a whole lot of glue. We just want it to stay in place and not move around. So I'm going to glue it right in the middle, and I'm going to pat that down. Okay, so right now we have a blank background and we have our donut sitting on top. We're going to need to let this dry for a little bit, and when it is nice and dry where it won't move around, we're going to move on to our next step. Okay, our next step to making our Collagraph donut is to grab our foil, and when you have your foil, you want the shiny side up, and you want to lay it onto the cardboard. And with one hand, you're going to press, and also you're going to wrap around the cardboard piece. So I'm just gonna really wrap this up. If you guys need to pause the video to do this, that's fine. You can do that as well. And I'm going to push this down. And then what's really important is I'm going to hold down with one hand, and using my finger, I'm going to press into the foil so that we see all the lines in our donut. You see our donut. So I'm using my hand to press so we really see that donut. Press this as flat as I can get it. just like that. All right, I'm gonna put that away for a moment. Put this Sharpie away. Okay, so you can see our donut. Then I'm gonna take my water-soluble markers or regular markers, and the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do the icing, and I'm gonna make my icing pink icing. So I'm gonna go in here and I'm going to use my marker and draw the pink outline, and I'm using this wavy line going around. Hopefully you can see this okay. And then I'm gonna fill it. Now it's not gonna be very dark, but when we do our print, it's gonna change color a bit. So I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna color in. And you really wanna add lots of color. And if you feel like it's not quite, really try and do this pretty quick. So we're inking the foil with our marker. And if you want some other type of like sprinkles or drizzle, you can take another marker color. If it's a darker marker, you might be able to draw right over the ink that you started with. If it is a darker color your icing is, you might want to do the sprinkles first or the drizzle first. Or you could go over it like this with your lines. You could do some drizzle and maybe, here I'll try and do a little bit. So we do some swirly lines, and if we get to this donut center, we skip it. Skip, see how I'm skipping it? So it's sprinkles and swirls, so maybe it's like a great drizzle. I don't know what kind of donut you're creating. And then we're gonna grab some brown, a brown marker to do the our donut, the outside edge of the donut where the dough is. So I'm gonna, you can do this before you do all the drizzle if you want, or you can do it after. So I'm doing, here, a little bit of that. Let's see, I'm tracing first and then going around. Trying to be quick, but you can take your time. Remember that that you can pause the video so you can really take your time with this. And don't worry, I don't want you to rush through. I want you have plenty of time to work on this. I'm just sort of working quickly so that I can get to the next step so you can see what the next step is. After we do our donut though, I'm going to then create a pattern background. Now remember, patterns, we create patterns by repeating lines, repeating shapes, and repeating colors, and we can combine those things. So let's say you want a swirly background. I'm going to pick a red, and I can do stripes if I want. So I could do diagonal stripes. Remember, I'm gonna skip, go in the middle of our donut because that's a hole, we see through it. We could do stripes like this. Or you could do two colors with stripes. Maybe I could alternate, you know, red and orange or something like that. You could do wavy lines. You could do zigzag lines. You could do, let's see, you could do, I call them bump lines, where they curve and bump. I'll kind of show you a little bit on another piece of paper what I'm describing. You can also add some different lines in between. So like, let's say I want to do some zigzag lines in between, or I could do polka dots. So I could do some polka dots in between my lines just to make it kind of a little more, have different, put those different patterns. Or you could do squares or rectangles or triangles. You could repeat any kind of pattern. The key is that you stick to one or two shapes and lines or colors, and you do them over and over and over. There has to be a sequence to the colors and lines you're using or shapes that you're using. You don't want to just do random shapes. If you just do a random shape here and there and a random color here and there, that's not really a pattern. There's an order to patterns. We have to have some kind of order. So to make it look a pattern and make it look consistent. It creates balance, it creates unity in our design, which people like to look at. Our viewers, people who like to look at our art, will enjoy it more if there is a unity or an order to our patterns. Now, can we get really fun and colorful? Absolutely, but we want it to be somewhat orderly. Okay, so here's my pattern I chose. And one of the patterns I was telling you all, you could do wavy lines, you could do zigzag lines. Now remember, you would repeat them. You could do dashed lines if you wanted to. You can make it repeating squares, repeating triangles, repeating circles, or you can combine those things. You could have lines inside of different shapes, or you could alternate square, triangle, square, triangle. You could even have repeating swirls. Ooh, that would be fun. So there are all kinds of pattern combinations. The key is to remember to repeat and to show an order to it. Okay. So I'm gonna put this to the side, bring in back my Collagraph. I'm actually going to cut another piece of paper because I drew on that one. So I'm gonna fold this paper in half for a moment. So I'm gonna line up the corners, fold it in half. I'm going to cut. This is how I have a smaller art piece. Cut it up in half. So I can make 2 different prints if I want to. All right, so I'm gonna bring this over and I'm gonna go make sure the sponge is a little wet. You don't want it where it's dripping wet. You just want it to be a little wet because we're going to wet our paper surface a little bit. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this wet for a moment and I'll be right back. Okay, I have a moist sponge right now. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my paper, I'm moving this, actually I probably should move it like this so I can really flip quickly. We don't want the water to dry too quick. So I'm going to take my moist sponge and I'm going to wet. This is why you need a thicker piece of paper, because with copy paper, it's so thin that if you get it wet, it might tear apart. So you want to make sure that you have a thicker, more like a construction type paper. And real quick, while it's wet, I'm going to take it, flip it, and put it down on my Collagraph. I'm going to hold with one hand and I'm going to press with the other. I'm going to press, press, press. I'm going to hold it with the other hand and press with the other. I'm hoping I put enough water. If you didn't put enough water, it might not print as well. Don't forget the inside of the donut hole. Make sure you press that donut real good. Press, press, press. Make sure you get corners and edges. I'm hoping I made it wet enough. And we're going to, oh, you can peek at it. Oh, I need to do a little more down here. I'm a little nervous I wasn't quite wet enough. So if you make a mistake and it's not quite wet enough, you can always re-wet your sponge and color again. Oh, see, you can tell, ooh, if I had my sponge and my paper was a little more wet, this would turn out really great. So you can see, but that's okay. I can just clean this off and I can just do a whole new donut if I want to with a new design. So I'm going to take this. Let's go ahead and clean off. I'm going to clean this off and we can do it one more time. I'm going to just do one more time and then I'm going to try and get a little bit my paper a little more wet. So, and also you might want a paper towel just to dry it off a little bit. All right, I made another design on my foil for my Collagraph. To try this again, I am going to take my sponge. I have a water bucket bowl this time, and I'm gonna squeeze my sponge because I don't want it super drippy wet. I just want it enough to make to saturate my paper. If it's not quite wet enough, I'm going to get a little more on here. You could probably even use a little bit of a spray bottle as long as your paper is thick enough. And I'm just sort of trying to make sure I get this plenty wet, because if it's not wet enough, it is not going to work as nicely. And I'm really, you can see I'm dipping and squeezing to get those edges. And while it's wet, before it gets too dry, I'm going to lay it, holding with one hand. I'm going to press real good. Hold with one hand and press and push using my fingers, making sure I get, oh yeah, I think this did a lot better this time. And that's the fun part about the Collagraph, is you could do this, do a design multiple times. And that is what printmaking is. It's being able to create a design and print it multiple times. This is how newspapers used to print their newspapers, multiple newspapers with the same information on it. Okay, I think we're good. So I'm going to, I've rubbed, make sure I get the inside there. And I'm going to lift. Oh, so pretty. It did get a little bit, I might have had a little too much water, but this is still really amazing and really pretty. So, and I love it. Even some of the ink that kind of spread out because it probably was a little too wet, still kind of gives it a nice effect. Now, if you want to as well, if you wanted to let this dry and then go back and just sort of clean it up a little bit, or do some outlining so we could see the shapes a little bit better, you could do that as well. So I am really happy with this. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to let this dry, and I really enjoyed that. And then look, it's all clean again, or you can you can wipe it and do it all over again and do another print. Maybe the next time I wouldn't get my paper quite as wet, but it definitely printed a lot better this time than the first time. Here's the first time. Though both were really, really fun. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed. This is the Collagraph, and I'm going to switch over and let's do a basic color drawing of a donut just for fun. This is for those of you who maybe do not have all the supplies for a Collagraph. Then you can just have fun drawing a donut. All right, for this version, I am going to not use markers. I'm actually going to go ahead and maybe use crayons or even colored pencils. I think I'm going to use my crayons because I have a lot more color options. All right, yeah, I think I'm going to use my crayons. I actually made another tracer using the same technique as I did with the Collagraph, but if you want, you can use just like a stiff paper and do the same thing where you fold the paper in half and you take something round and you do half of it, you lay over, remember on the fold, you want to lay it over the fold, trace it, and then add another half circle in the middle, and when you open it, it should make your donut tracer or your donut shape. Or you can just draw it directly onto your paper like this. So I can put my circle if I wanted to. Again, this is your choice. I'm going to use a Sharpie marker, but you can use a pencil if you don't feel comfortable with Sharpie or you don't have one available. And we could just trace the circle this time around instead of using the tracer, and then add a circle right in the middle, just like that. All right. Then I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to grab my crayons because I'm gonna use crayons this time. You could use colored pencils. You could use markers. My markers, I don't really have that. I just have a really dark brown. I don't have a lighter tan color, which is not great, especially if you wanna make chocolate drizzle or chocolate frosting on your, or chocolate glaze on your donut. So that's why I'm kind of pulling out the crayons, because this time around, I think I want to use, I want to create, let's see here, maybe it's a lemon meringue donut. Maybe it is a blueberry donut with some blue icing. That sounds really fun. I think that's what I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna do some wavy lines going around the outer shape and then a wavy line going on the inner shape for my dressing. And I'm actually going to, with the dark blue, I'm going to add sprinkles, but because I'm using a light blue, I actually can go over the light blue with my dark blue. So I'm going to color in first, and then I'm going to go over and add sprinkles with the dark blue. Now, if I was doing dark blue first and then adding light blue, I would actually need to add the sprinkles in and color around them, because we can't color over the dark colors, but we can color over the lighter colors. So that's just a little color trick. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to fill in my donut. And I like working with crayons and pencils and colored pencils because I can actually get some value change or value difference in my colors and get a lot more options for color choice. But if you want to use markers, you can use markers. Markers are absolutely fine. And I probably will either fast forward this a little bit to kind of move on to the next step. But if you want to, you can pause the video. If you need a little more time to color, go ahead and pause the video. Finish this up. And I am working very quickly, but I would like you all to take your time. Do a good job. And if you mess it up, remember you can just dress it up. So let's say I go, oop, out of my line, no big deal. I'm gonna dress it up. There we go, dress it up. I'm gonna dress up a little more. Okay, there's my blueberry icing, and then I'm gonna put some blueberry sprinkles. You see how we can still see the dark blue over the lighter blue? It makes, but if we did it the other way where we had dark blue first, it'd be much harder to color with a lighter blue. So you want to be careful and watch your color choices. Okay, doing some blueberry sprinkles because this is a blueberry donut. And then I'm going to do my the dough, the donut dough. Now I'm going to use brown, but what's important is if you color very lightly, not so dark, then it will be a lighter tan color instead of that really dark brown. Dark brown is, to me, looks more like chocolate, and we want this to look more like dough, donut dough. And donut dough tends to be a little lighter and kind of a yellow, brown, tan color. So actually, I could either just color this really lightly, keep it light. The other thing I can do to get the color I'm more looking for is to mix, because the great thing about colored pencils and crayons and even things like oil pastels, some paints are paint as well, we can mix to create new colors. And if there is a color that we do not have, we can use our materials and mix them together to get the color we want. So I want this to be kind of a yellow tan color, so I'm going to take my yellow and just mix it in. See, so it gives it sort of that yellowy, doughy tan color. So kind of neat, right? You can make all kinds of different colors even with crayons. The key is that you don't want to color too hard. If you get too dark with your crayon or with your color, then it's hard to mix and see them mix together. So you want to kind of be a little lighter when you're putting especially the first layer of color down. So see, so it kind of has that doughy color. And because this is a blueberry donut, I want to do maybe some blue patterns in my background. So your patterns can go with your donut if you like. So let's see, I think I'm going to do some wavy lines, and I think I'm going to use two colors, but I'm going to use the darker one because there's not much of that in my picture. So I'm going to do some wavy lines, and remember, we want to create a pattern. A pattern is when we repeat lines, shapes, and colors, or a combination, and there should be an order to it. If we just put random shapes and random lines with no order to it, it's not really a pattern. So we want to, so you can do any pattern of your choice. I'm just doing this one as an example, but you could do any pattern of choice. And don't forget, when you get kind of close to where the donut hole is, you want to show the pattern going behind the donut hole. Actually, I gotta do one right there because it's a hole. We see through it. So I'm gonna, now I could leave my pattern just like this, or I could add another blue wave too in between each pattern line. Again, it's up to you what kind of pattern you want to create. That's where your creativity comes in. So I could go in and I could even add, you know, another blue wave with a different blue if I wanted to. I could even color in every other line or something. Actually, that looks very close to the same color. So this is where you can experiment a little bit. Let's try this one. I don't know if it'll look, oh, that looks a little different. It looks more purple, but that's okay. So I could add this in between each of my lines to just give it an extra, just something extra to the pattern design to make it unique. All right, I'm gonna finish this up real quick. And don't forget in between in the donut hole. You can see I'm just following the pattern. And one more. Again, you can skip or you can pause if you need extra time. And there's my donut. Doesn't it look really yummy? I wonder what kind of name I would give it. Maybe Blueberry Blast or Blueberry Supreme, Donut Supreme, or something like that. Maybe come up with a fun name and put it on the back of your drawing, okay? All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed everything. I hope you enjoyed the donut collagraph as well as the donut drawing. And I can't wait to see what you create, and I hope you get a chance to share it with me. All right, guys, have fun creating. Bye.